Everyone, it's Devi with doitlikedevi.com, a lifestyle blog helping you to do more and save more. And more recently, if you've been following through my different hiatuses at this point, someone who is a resource for you in the immigration process, particularly as it relates to the CR-1, IR-1 spousal visa. To quickly recap, my husband and I did consular processing through the London embassy. So that meant that I was residing within the US and he was outside of the US while we were waiting for that I-130 to be approved. Once it was there, we did the rest of the processing through the London embassy, and then he finally entered the US in September 2020. And it's hard to believe, but we're almost at the 2-year mark that he set foot on US soil, therefore starting the timeline of his permanent residency card. And now we have to remove the conditions. So as you can probably guess, today is all about removing the conditions and the application process for that. This is for the CR-1 visa. So basically, if you or your spouse has entered the United States on the spousal visa and you have not yet been 2 years married, then you are given conditional residence for 2 years. And at that point, once the 2-year mark is approaching, you'll have to file to remove the conditions, and that gives you then a 10-year permanent resident card. And before we get completely underway, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. If you could please like, comment, subscribe. That way we're all still building a community here when I am on a 1-year hiatus because I had a baby and I'm not hopping in the comments. I've seen that others of you have stepped in and answered other people's questions, so I'm very, very grateful for that. And I think it's awesome. 2 of our dear friends are from the immigration process, and they actually, both of them have sons that are around our son's age. So it's been so nice to just go through not only this journey together with the whole visa processing and the spousal visas and long distance to now living together relationships and multicultural relationships, but also just the walk in parenthood. And that's why you haven't heard from me for the past year, essentially. Not that I underestimated the demands of a baby, but the way that I've parented is just trying to be so hands-on, especially in this first year of my son's life. When I'm with him, I really just try to be all in. I work when I'm not working. I try to be without my cell phone. I don't want to be texting. I don't want him to think that, you know, that's more important than him, or that takes precedence over our time together. So it's just been hard to do pretty much anything, including these videos. So without further ado, we'll launch into this whole removing the conditions. It's the I-751 and all the supporting documents that go along with it. But thank you all again so much for being here. It is much appreciated by me and our family here. All right, so there is a 90-day window to remove your conditions. This window would start 3 months prior to when your permanent residency ends. So you or your spouse, whoever is the spouse that immigrated to the United States under the spousal visa, you or they have, as a family or a couple, a 90-day window. In the case of us, my husband set foot in the US on that visa September of 2020. Therefore, our window for removing the conditions opened up June of this year, 2022. About a month prior, you will most likely, hopefully your address is up to date and everything, you'll get a piece of mail from USCIS. We got it around mid-May, which was tracking right about a month before the window for removing our conditions open. So you will get a letter from here. And then subsequently, I also checked my husband's USCIS account online. Same thing. They do list in your profile electronically when they issued out that notice and just anything associated with the permanent residency. So basically in the mail and then digitally in your USCIS account, you will see the form I-797C, Notice of Action. And again, that is to file the I-751, removing the conditions. It'll be addressed to the permanent resident spouse. So in this case, when my husband, before he immigrated to the US, you know how we had to pay those fees? That account that I created, that was in his name, separate to when we processed the I-130, because I was a petitioner at that point. So when you're removing the conditions for the I-751, the petitioner is the permanent resident card holder. So the foreign spouse, so to speak. It's from their perspective, and they are filling out that form as them. So when it comes to like the spousal listing, you as a US citizen are the spouse at this point, not the petitioner. The purpose of the I-751 and the reason why they give the conditional residency of 2 years if you've been under 2 years married by the time that your spouse has entered the United States usually is just to make sure that it's a good faith marriage. So essentially you're trying to then in this application prove that you've entered the marriage in good faith. You are able to file and petition if you are no longer with your US citizen spouse. However, I will just be going over it from the narrative of we're still in the relationship, entered into it with good faith, and doing it from that perspective only just because that's our reality here. There's other ways to file even if you are no longer with your spouse for a variety of reasons. But for this one, just going to go about it as you're together and filing together. Okay, so same as the I-130, the one application that triggered the whole process, I am doing it in the same format and submitting it as I did with that application. This would be putting it into a file folder and it'll be 2 hole punched at the top. I fastened it with this fastener only because it's much easier for USCIS to basically extract it out, make a copy, because you know they will make a copy of everything and digitize it. So you don't want to be having them deal with trying to rip open your staples, and plus this file is so big. Here's my copy stack. I don't think there's a stapler out there. Maybe there is. But anyways, also to note, do make a copy of everything that you submitted, and it's just always good to have a copy. So make sure you're making a copy of it or you're scanning it and saving it digitally somewhere just so you have it for reference as far as what you submitted. And again, don't print on both sides, just do it single pagers, nothing on the back. When filling out the I-751 application, just be sure to note, USCIS tweeted about this a few years ago, and I mentioned this on a previous video, but anything that's blank, just put N/A. So like not available or not applicable. That way you're not just leaving it blank because it might look incomplete to them. Okay, so let me show you page 11. This is the additional information page. And again, this is actually what I'm going to be submitting. This whole thing compiled in this manila folder. So again, when you're not having anything to display, you'll put NA so that it looks like it's not just left blank, and intentionally you did indicate that nothing is applicable there. Make sure that when you're also signing, you're signing in black pen. I had read that if you sign in blue or you don't sign at all, the whole application will be null and void. So make sure that you're signing with a black pen. All right, I'm just gonna quickly go over everything that we're submitting as far as other documentation and then proof of the relationship. So front and back copies of the permanent resident card. So make sure that you do have that in there. As far as whether it's colored copy or black and white, USCIS accepts either. Just make sure that it's readable. We had tried, I think, a copy machine at first for my husband's permanent resident card, and the toner was just so light. So that didn't work. So we ended up just scanning and printing it, and it was much better. But don't forget, front and back of the permanent resident card. And we are submitting our lease agreement. So we're showcasing that we've established a life together. So we're doing the lease agreement and lease renewal documentation. That way it shows that we are residing together. If you have any children in your marriage, do include their birth certificates. So in this case, we do have one for our son. If you have multiple children together, you'll just want to include all of that documentation together for each child. Or say one of you went into the marriage with a baby or a child and the other adopted, you'll want to show documentation, something along those lines where you're basically enjoying custody of said children. Then we went into our brokerage accounts and our employer's life insurance portals just to pull beneficiary information. So both Fabian and I listed each other as beneficiaries on these different items, such as our brokerage accounts and our life insurance policies that we have through our employer. You'll essentially want to pull items that are joint responsibility for financial liability and welfare. For a bank account information, etc., we did blank out our account numbers and also the values in there just for security reasons, but I'm sure USCIS, given that they have our social securities, could be privy to that information if they wanted to, but just in any case, we're just blanking those particular items out. Then we are submitting travel itinerary information and boarding passes for all trips that have been taken since we got married. So in our case, we have just about 5 of them in a cover letter that I'm attaching at the very beginning. I'm essentially laying out and listing all of these different items and how many pages it is. That way it's just a very, very easy legend for the USCIS officer who's processing your petition just to be able to reference really quickly. I think it's just a good way to submit the file cleanly. That way they have reference to exactly the contents of what you're submitting and if there's any further context involved. Next we have, and this is more of like the fun stuff of gathering, cards from relatives, family, friends, and relatives addressed to both of us. So they need to be addressed to both of us. So it showcases that you are indeed a couple. We've submitted about 5 different cards. I'm sure there's more, but I'm pulling just 5 spanning different occasions. I am also including 2 affidavits in support of our marriage to basically articulate how our marriage has been from a friend or family perspective. So in this case, one of my best friends wrote an affidavit and so did my dad. I'm submitting both of those, and of course with signatures, and then information such as full name, birthplace, address, and passport number. I'm just doing that. I'm having them submit that just for reference. For USCIS, you don't need to notarize the document or anything like that, but you do want to have certain items like the affidavit author's name, birth date, birthplace, and you don't actually have to have the passport number listed in their signature, but in any case, if you do have access to that or the person writing your affidavit feels comfortable submitting that information, then go ahead and do it. I think it just adds a layer of legitimacy to the person writing the affidavit. I almost wasn't going to submit affidavits this time. I did for the I-130, but I wasn't going to for the I-751. But sure enough, when I checked the instructions manual for how to fill and file this form, item number 5, let me get the exact language. Under the evidence of relationship, sure enough, number 5 says affidavit sworn to or affirmed by at least 2 people who have known both of you since your conditional residence was granted and have personal knowledge of your marriage and relationship. Again, under the evidence of relationship, it says the documents should include, but are not limited to, and they give the examples, including the affidavits. So granted that they have a whole number assigned to it as far as like what kind of evidence to submit, I was just like, you might as well, just to play it safe. More is better in this situation. The more that you can submit, the better it is. That's just my philosophy. Cover your bases, do submit as much as you can, especially if you're lacking in other areas. Say you're not having a document about joint occupancy together or establish like a financial tie together, like a joint bank account. In lieu of other things, the affidavits become very, very important in this situation. And then finally, after the affidavits, the 2 that I'm submitting, we're submitting about 9 pages of photos. So the photos don't need to be colored, but they need to be clear. In my case, we used a color printer. That way, if the officer who is processing our application is looking, they're understanding the context of the photos, who's in the photos, and where the photos are, and when the photo took place. Then finally, final reminder, do not forget to submit the filing fee for it. In our case, we are paying $680. It's the $595 filing fee and the $85 biometrics processing fee. Not cheap, but hey, you are doing the application yourself, so you are saving on attorney fees because you are more than capable of doing it yourself. You just have to make sure that you are dedicating time to make sure that you're re-verifying every single aspect of the application before you submit it. Put as much detail and context as possible into the evidence that you're submitting. Again, whether that's a cover letter articulating all the different pieces of documentation like I will be doing. And then again, for the filing fee, I'm writing a personal check. That's totally fine to do. You can do a cashier's check. You can also pay online. I don't want to go that route. I'm just going to do the check. Unfortunately, there is no way at the current moment to submit the I-751 digitally, so it is hard copy. I will include the links below as far as the instruction sheet, the form itself, and then where to file. It really depends on which state you're located in at the time of filing. For the filing fee itself, the filing fee and the biometrics, I had looked online because I wasn't sure if it was going to be 2 separate checks for the filing and biometrics fee. I consulted our trusty Visa Journey, and it looks like you are able to submit both on one consolidated check, or you can do 2 separate checks. Just make sure you're making notations of what the fees are for in the memo of the check. In my case, I'm just going to elect to do one check in general. I believe as long as the filing amount is correct, you should be good. But don't forget, the biometrics fee of $85 needs to be per applicant. Say it's your spouse and a child that's filing, you would have to include a biometrics fee for each applicant. Anyhow, thank you so much for accompanying us on this immigration journey. It's an ongoing journey for us. You know, we've had, within the last 2 years, looking back at it, just so many things have happened. Job changes for Fabian. He got his permit, his driving permit, and then his license. We've just been trying to navigate him kind of learning like the American workforce culture and other aspects of American culture. We've had our son, we had a home birth, and I'm sure that will be like another video at some point. Not relevant at all to immigration, of course, but just, you know, everybody has their own unique things that they fill their lives with. So we're happy to be in this format and share a bit of our story with you guys. That way you are able to hopefully relate and identify to different aspects of what we're going through at the same time as you. And again, please, if you can continue to help us build our community, like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend if it pertains to them. It'll be very much appreciated. And until next time, take care and see you soon. So we are here at FedEx, and this time I have my
husband? No. Are you still thinking about it? No. Great, yeah.
My CR-1 spouse. This time we're at the same place as I was when I mailed the original I-130s, and now we're doing the I-751. So it was just a very unique chance to go full circle, and I just thought I would record this. Yay.